It's been a tough year during the pandemic lockdowns for farmers and crofters across Scotland. They've been unable to meet up on farm visits and share knowledge. These visits provided a valuable opportunity for farmers to share best practice and offer ideas for improving business performance. Now, as the world has moved online, farmers and crofters the length and breadth of Scotland are opening their farm gates to share knowledge and information in a new and exciting way. Throughout 2021, FAS TV will be highlighting the changes farmers and crofters have made to their operation. Over the next 5 episodes, we'll be focusing on 5 farms in the central belt of Scotland. Coming up on this episode of FAS TV, we look at robotic milking, investigate the benefits of Calving Outdoors, and wintering ewes indoors. Moving to a robotic milking system is a big step. Here's how one Lanarkshire farming family went about it. On-farm robotics are becoming increasingly popular. At Auchnotroch in Lanarkshire, the Baird family have replaced milking in the parlour with a 4-robot system. It was a big decision to make the change, but for the Bairds, it's been worth it.
I'd done 20 years in the parlour, my knees weren't appreciating it. Kirsty's back isn't very good either. She played badminton when she was younger and wrecked her back.
Well, it was Dad that suggested it. I wasn't really that keen on it. We'd been to a few bits through college, but when Dad suggested it, and when you're actually milking twice a day with no chance of a long lie, then it's quite a good idea. So yeah, when we decided that we would put them in, it was definitely the way forward for us, being a girl as well, looking for a family in the future. Robots make life a lot easier.
From when we actually started the works, we started 3rd week in May, I think it was. We just as soon as we finished first cut of silage, I had a digger in here and we get this, started digging holes, and we started milking 28th of January.
A new lean-to shed was built to house the robots, and the existing cows had to be trained in using the new system.
We started 10 days before we started milking, just using them as out-of-parlour feeders. So as they came out of the parlour, they were directed through here, through the robot before they could get to silage. So with 10 days of that, so we maybe getting finished 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock at night, trying to persuade them to go through in the first couple of nights, and then it get quicker and quicker. And by the time we started milking, we would be down to 20-30 cows we would be pushing through.
So we changed the settings on the robots, and that freed up the empty time. This area here was filled with cows last winter, and that really emptied this out, and it made the shy cows come, so we had less of a late list. We weren't collecting cows, so that made a big difference to the system. And this is the first year that all the cows have calved onto the robots. So we're currently milking 3.6 times a day, 193 cows, 7.5 visits and 33 litres on average, so they're doing quite well.
As well as reducing the labour required from the farmer, the robots also provide a wealth of information.
We've got a list on how often they're milking, and how frequently, how many hours between each milking they're doing. We get their yield at each milking, and then for a 24-hour average, we get their concentrate that they're allowed and the concentrate that they eat, and their mastitis as well. We get their conductivity, so that's something that I keep an eye on a daily basis, just that they're eating, that they're coming to visit, and then the milk just seems to come with that. So
cows seem happy as well.
Often when you see robot people, they say, you know, your sick cows are the ones at the top of the late list, and I think we've been quite good this year that we've noticed these cows before they're at the top of the late list. Just walking around the shed, you have more time to observe the cows, you're picking them up before their yields dropping, and you're able to intervene a lot quicker because you're here and you've got time to look at them.
Well, milk's up, lifestyle's easier with far less stress on the cows. We've really noticed the heifers are maintaining their condition far better. They're not the ones that are getting pushed to the back of the collecting area and coming through at the end of the milking and having to stand for hours. The heifers are really noticed a big difference in heifers.
Next time we'll be looking at block calving at Auchnotroch. In Ayrshire, a number of sheep farmers are always looking for ways to increase production with the same fixed land area. Dependent on shed availability, winter housing ewes is becoming a more popular option for many. At King's Arms, farmers Robert and Caroline, along with their two farm managers, Andrew McLean and Andrew Nutt, run an intensive high-output system, which involves winter housing of ewes and targeting the early lamb market.
I'm Andrew McLean. I've been farm manager here at King's Arms for 26 years. King's Arms is situated in Ballantrae, right in the shore, so we're pretty fortunate with some good dry ground. We have about 1,400 ewes to lamb and 200 cows, mostly dairy bred, but we do have some pedigree Charlies which we breed some bulls and sell some bulls off farm. Lambing here starts at the end of February, so we start with the main flock of ewes and move on to the hogs. We buy in mule ewes as gimmers, and they are tucked with a texel, which we keep the ewe lambs off of, and they are tucked as ewe lambs with the Beltex, and then as gimmers and ewes with the Suffolk or Beltex cross to produce our early lambs. The first kind of 500 pair, the Suffolk cross lambs are creep fed to hopefully hit the early market, and they'll go between 9 and 10 weeks old. Mostly sold dead weight to woodheads through Ayrshire Country Lamb. Killing out about 20 kilos and hopefully hit some quite good grades with these lambs. The later lambs, Beltex crosses, are just grass fed. We find they finish fine off grass and we don't need to creep feed them later on either, so it gives us two sort of systems to get rid of the lambs early, and then that lets our cows get a wee bit more grass and thin things out as things go on.
When do you typically bring ewes inside?
Ewes are brought in for scanning mid-December. So we scan the ewes, keep in the triplets and the twins, and if the weather's good enough we'll put the singles back outside till maybe end of December, beginning of January. When the ewes are brought in, we split them up into twins, triplets and singles, and then they're also condition scored as they go into the pens, so that we can start feeding leaner ones whenever we need them.
And why do you lamb so early in the year?
To try and hit the early market with the lambs. We've got a good climate here, a bit milder than inland. We can grow grass, so try and utilise that and get lambs away as quickly as possible. We start drawing lambs mid-May and we draw lambs every single week, right through to about September when we maybe have a week off.
And you mentioned creep feeding. What's your system for that?
The Texel ewes that lamb first are then lamb to the Suffolk, which the Suffolk we find is a really good fast-growing lamb. So we lamb them at the start to the Suffolk, which all go into creep fields and tire. We don't actually castrate the top lambs. Once the lambs are out with their mums in the field, when the minute you start seeing the lambs nibble at the feeding along with their mothers, we'll put creep feed into the feeders. So mid-March we'll probably have creep feed into the feeders, and they're fed ad lib until they're ready to go, which is usually between 9 and 10 weeks. we can have lambs at 20 kilos dead. The Texel ewes that are put to the suffolk for the creep field, the way we manage them is slightly different to the mule ewes. The mule ewes are block speined in July. We'll spein all the weather lambs and all the ewe lambs. We've had a couple of draws of weather lambs out them, but we tend to spein the whole lot at one time. The Texel ewes in the creep fields, every time I sell lambs, I try and shed off the ewes that's lambs of weight. So they'll go onto a field with very little grass, which frees up the good grass fields for other sheep or the cattle.
While there are many benefits to the system, there are some key challenges to consider.
This year's been, as you would love it to be, up to now. Other years we've had sleet, we've had snow, you have to have a lot of shades to be able to hold ewes and lambs in. You can't just put them straight out. We're fortunate, our buildings we can convert for cattle into holding ewes and lambs, so it gives us a chance to hold them.
And for any farmers, thinking about wintering ewes inside, thinking about targeting the early market, what would be your top tips?
I think you have to have the climate to do it. There's a lot of folk do it. You need to have the staff, you need to have the shades. It isn't cheap. I mean, we're buying in a lot of straw, we need to make silage. But if you can do all of these things, there's no reason why you can't do it. Some folk maybe split them and creep feed some of them and like lamb in 2 batches. It could be done, but I think you have to think about it quite hard, so there is a lot of work involved compared with it. I lambed outside before I came here and it's a different job altogether. But we find we can run a lot more stock because we do it.
Here in the East Lothians, some farmers are looking more closely at how they establish their crops. One farm in particular, where this journey is underway, is here at Castleton Farm, extending to 425 acres and growing wheat, beans and spring barley.
We were originally on the power harrow drill, box drill, and before that we were on a massive grain fert drill. So we went the box drill, we moved to grain only, and at the time there wasn't a big thing about grain and fert, so we went to just a grain only drill. The new drill is grain and fert. That means you have a hopper, grain, seed, and a hopper fertiliser. So this drill is a cultivator drill. It cultivates at the front, and then it's got a row of wheels, which are packers, and each wheel looks after 2 coulters at the back, disc coulters. And disc coulters are crucial for us because we looked at a leg drill. So the leg's fine, but we have a knot grass problem, and the knot grass will hank on the legs. So a disc coulter is, the discs are set in a slight V, and what they'll do is they push down and they actually cut a slot, and the seed sits in behind, and then you have a press wheel which pulls the soil back in to get that good seed soil contact, and then obviously a harrow at the back. This 3 metre drill gives the same output, if not a bigger output, than a 4 metre combination unit. Okay. This drill on our old system costs us 1/3 less in time and 1/3 less in fuel costs. And also, if we talk about carbon, I'm not moving the soil as much.
Stewart's Bednar drill is highly flexible for a one-man band. It can drill into previously cultivated soil or go into bare stubble, with the option of lowering the front discs to move soil in front of the disc coulters. Alternatively, he can lift them and only move 50mm bands of soil directly in front of the drill coulters. This last option is true no-till drilling. Purchasing the drill has allowed Stuart to establish his spring barley crop faster, more efficiently and at a reduced cost.
The field you can see at the moment, yes, spring barley last year. We then put a EFA cover crop mixture in, just for Phacelia, radish and mustard. We are going to desiccate this field off in the next couple of weeks, hopefully leave about 6 weeks before drilling, and then we're going to come in with the new drill and we're going to sow directly into what we see here with these discs. And then we'll see what happens in the springtime when it comes through the ground. When you go down the route of a min-till direct drilled system, your soils will allow you to get on quicker with a machine in the autumn or in the springtime, because when you go and do your first dressing of fertiliser, if you go into a field that's been ploughed and cultivated, that'll be wet. Where you can come into a min-tilled field or a direct drilled field, that soil's not been disturbed.
What are the drawbacks of the min-till stroke no-till system?
One of the drawbacks is weeds. As you're not ploughing and basically creating a stale seed bed, you have to spray, you have to use herbicides.
Within a min-till no-till system, there can still be a place for the plough, and what is that place?
The plough is there as a reset button, so if you get inundated with too many weeds, you can go back to the reset button.
And so what do you think, for people interested in min-till, no-till, what are the conditions that they need to have in their farm, in their farming business, for them to kind of consider it?
I think it's a mindset, and I think it's also speaking to your neighbours, speaking to others, looking on YouTube or something to go and see what other farmers have been doing and look in the publications that we get through Farming Press. It's not a quick fix overnight. Your yields will reduce in the first couple of years as your soil adapts to what you're trying to do. But in the benefit in the long run is you'll have more live organisms in the soil, they'll be happier, you'll have more worms, you'll use less fuel, you'll be less time in the field that allows you to go and do other things.
And then what's your kind of takeaway message about technology?
First thing I would say is for advances in technology, get GPS on a tractor. It takes over the control of going in a straight line or a curved line, however you've set it up. That takes the stress off you as an operator. But then it also reduces your cultivation paths, reduces fuel usage for those cultivations, those extra passes you're not doing. And you need to realise that the public eye is looking at us more and more, and what's for public good and the environment. So we're part of this huge big picture.
Many farmers calve their cows inside, but as bedding costs steadily increase, and with a view to reducing the health problems that can come from calving inside, some are looking to move their cows outside. Beef farmers are always looking for ways to improve profitability. One such farm is Dusthall in Ayrshire. Farmer Richard Goldie has been calving his cows outside to keep costs down.
I've generally been calving outdoors since we started. In the year 2000 we used to calve beef of the dairy herd, and then we got into beef 2008, and we've calved outdoors purely because it's what we've always done, and due to lack of shed space indoors, it was just going to prove too difficult to calve indoors. Cows are turned out for calving as and when spring dictates, but generally in this part of the world, once we get to about the benchmarks about the 20th of April, when the fields are dry enough and there's also a bite of grass to get to, but not that you want the cows that are calving to have too much grass anyway. Turn them all out at once. tend to keep the heifers inside and a shed up at the other farm, so that they tend to calve indoors, but the cows generally just all get turned out, the door gets opened and they kick their heels and off-ski.
Two of the factors that drove Richard to make the decision was the volatile cost of straw and the potential health issues of calving indoors.
Well, the reason we calve outdoors is primarily to save on cost of bedding, because it gets dearer and dearer every year. Shed space for the remainder of the ewes that are lambing. I like to lamb them inside for management, and the straw bedded courts that we have left are used for fattening cattle that are left over from last year. The main issues are cleanliness of the bedding, a healthier environment if you can get the cow to calve outside, generally cleaner to calve on the grass than in a mucky shed where the calf is more susceptible to disease such as joint ill.
There are a number of factors to take into account when choosing fields to calve cattle in. Some fields will be substantially better than others.
Generally, the field I use for calvings, for a management issue, I use a big field up in the other farm. It's a freer draining field, so it's drier, and from a management point of view, you can see every corner from standing in one point, as opposed to having to drive round the stock and upsetting them. And then if they're actually calving them, if they're calving at the same time, they're less likely to calve because you're upsetting them by driving round them. If you can see them from a distance, I see it as a huge benefit. The field where we calve actually has a railway banking running round it, and lots of trees for shelter, and the cows tend to go back to the same kind of areas where they obviously feel shelter and safety. The plan B, when the weather goes bad, firstly I would try and thin the cows out. Rather than there being too many in one field, I would separate them into two fields, and if the weather is persistently bad, then I would generally bring them back into a straw-bedded court until the weather takes back up.
It's not just the field that needs to be taken into consideration. Richard has found that some breeds are more suited to outdoor calving than others.
I feel the cows that I have currently suit the system through. I've got stabiliser cross cows, cross Aberdeen Angus. They're proven to have a wide pelvis for calving naturally themselves. They're docile, and they're also hardy to the inclement weather that we can get in the west coast of Scotland. If you were interested in getting into calving cows outside, I would pick your temperament of cattle first of all, and the breed due to pelvic size and measurements and all that kind of thing, and hopefully everything 99% should calve on their own.
Hello, I'm Raymond and welcome to the Rural Roundup. I'm a Regional Development Manager with SAC Consulting. This week in farming, we're at the very beginning of the application window for the Basic Payment Scheme, and soon farmers and landowners across Scotland will be submitting their annual claims. The Agriculture and Rural Economy Directorate are continually monitoring the COVID-19 situation and understand that it will impact how applicants complete their single application forms. The entitlement transfer window is still open for those farmers and landowners looking to sell or purchase entitlements in 2021 and will shut on the 2nd of April. Any entitlement transfer forms submitted after this date will not take effect until 2022. The deadline for the Sustainable Agriculture Capital Grant Scheme is also coming up at the end of this month. All successful applicants are encouraged to get their claims in as soon as possible. If an item will not be on farm and paid by the 31st of March, it is important that you still claim the item on your claim form, and also accompany the claim with an order confirmation note from the supplier with an estimated delivery date. You then have until the 30th of September to submit an invoice and bank statement for that item. If you now no longer wish to purchase an item, then simply put a 0 on the claim form. The Agri-Environment Climate Scheme, or EECS, is now fully open for applications, with funding options to support the protection of designated sites and priority species, as well as for slurry storage, organic farming and public access. The deadline for applications is the end of June, and those interested in applying should coordinate with NatureScot and the respective agent. The Scottish Government are continuing to up the ante in climate change policy development, with strategic sector-specific groups looking to identify the issues holding back each agricultural sector in Scotland. The groups established so far include representatives from across the different sectors in Scottish agriculture, with groups targeting arable, dairy, pig, hill and crofting sectors. The Suckler Brief Group has already put forward its proposals to the Scottish Government. A lot of our viewers will now be busy lambing and calving, so we wish them the very best of luck. I would like to remind you all that the Farm Advisory Service is there with plenty of free resource and knowledge to assist you if required. Stay tuned for more with the Farm Advisory Service and FAS TV. Thank you.
Next time, calving heifers at 2, the benefits of woodland shelter at lambing time, and we've a veterinary update. For more information on any of our stories, go online to fas.scot.